A group of Venezuelans attempting to return to their home country has been stranded for 3 days along the northern highway of the Colombian capital, Bogota. In the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, the United States has continued deportations of migrants to Latin America and Caribbean countries, thus exporting COVID-19 cases. The polio vaccination campaign in Africa has been put on hold due to the coronavirus pandemic, sparking warnings of fresh outbreaks. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. A group of Venezuelans attempting to return to their home country has been stranded for 3 days along the northern highway of the Colombian capital, Bogota. Some 12 buses are parked on the highway, waiting for authorization to proceed to cross the border. In the absence of a response from Colombian authorities, the Venezuelan citizens are demanding that President Ivan Duque and Bogota Mayor Claudia Lopez activate a humanitarian corridor so they can proceed to Venezuela without any obstacles. Experts have warned that the longer they are stranded, the greater the risk of COVID-19 infection, precisely the reason why these Venezuelan citizens want to return to their home country, escaping the spread of the virus in Colombia. Colombian authorities have so far reported over 6,000 COVID-19 cases and 278 deaths. Russian representatives to the UN have reiterated condemnation of US attempts to use the coronavirus pandemic to pressure the Venezuelan government. Deputy Ambassador of Russia to the UN, Dmitry Polyansky, questioned the UN decision to discuss Venezuela in the context of the coronavirus, while the situation is far worse in neighbouring countries. Polyansky reminded the international community that the US and several European countries have frozen $9 billion worth of Venezuelan funds, money which could be spent on purchasing equipment and medicines abroad. Polyansky condemned the extraterritorial US sanctions, as well as threats and blackmail, as gross violations of international law. The Brazilian Ministry of Health this Tuesday reported 474 new COVID-19 deaths, representing a record daily toll. Brazil has now seen more than 5,000 fatalities and over 74,000 cases, making it the worst hit country in Latin America. According to the Health Ministry itself, the actual number of deaths could be even higher than the official data, as the results of tests to determine the cause of more than 1,000 suspected COVID-19 deaths are pending. Meanwhile, the government of Jair Bolsonaro decided to extend the ban on foreigners entering the country by air for a further 30 days, amid strong criticism of the president's handling of the health crisis. And Brazil's Supreme Court has suspended President Jair Bolsonaro's controversial appointment of Alexandre Ramagem as new federal police chief. Ramagem is a close friend of the Bolsonaro family, sparking concern that he would give them undue preferential treatment at a time when two of the president's sons are reportedly under investigation by the federal police. The ruling came after a request by the Democratic Labour Party, which claimed Bolsonaro is trying to interfere in investigations that affect him personally. Bolivia's Chamber of Deputies is debating a bill giving the green light to hold presidential elections. Deputies are debating the bill drafted by the Supreme Electoral Court, proposing that general elections initially scheduled for May 3rd and suspended due to the COVID-19 pandemic be held sometime between June 28th and September 27th this year. These will be the first elections after the coup against former President Evo Morales in November last year. Cuban health authorities have noted that the peak of the coronavirus infections could come as early as next week, well before the outbreak begins to subside on the island. On Wednesday, health officials announced 30 new COVID-19 cases for a total of 1,467. More than 3,000 people are hospitalized under suspicion of being infected, while no new fatalities have been reported. Authorities stressed that there are signs that the outbreak is beginning to plateau and the numbers of new cases should begin dropping by the first week of May. Meanwhile, medical teams continue to closely monitor hotspots around the country, and medical students continue to knock on doors to question residents and survey neighbourhoods for possible cases. Cuban health authorities have quarantined some neighbourhoods due to a high number of cases in an effort to contain the spread of the virus. Prisoners across Peru have protested and rioted to demand health guarantees amid the COVID-19 epidemic. Riots were staged in several prisons on Monday and Tuesday following the deaths of several inmates infected with the novel coronavirus. 9 prisoners were killed in the riots, according to local authorities. Peru's overcrowded jails have been hit hard by the coronavirus, which has killed at least 13 prisoners, while more than 500 have been infected. Peru has confirmed over 31,000 COVID-19 cases, the second highest number in the Latin American region after Brazil. Meanwhile, health authorities have reported 854 fatalities. The COVID-19 virus continues to spread across several countries of the Caribbean. Our correspondent in the Dominican Republic, Daisy Toussaint, brings us more details.
Greetings to all our viewers. In the Dominican Republic, 51,580 people have been detained for breaching the curfew implemented by the government as a measure to avoid the spread of COVID-19. As for the number of coronavirus cases in the country, Public Health Bulletin 41 was issued today, which revealed that in 24 hours, 236 new positive cases were registered, bringing the total to 60,652, while there have been 293 fatalities at the national level, representing a mortality rate of 4.4%. In Haiti, a country that shares the same island as the Dominican Republic, experts are analyzing the response and preparation for the post-pandemic period in this nation. In the 10th edition of Haiti's International Financial Summit, which was held virtually for the first time in 10 years due to the lockdown, economic challenges for developing countries already limited in terms of public policy were addressed. The governor of the Bank of the Republic of Haiti said that the country is facing a crisis for which it was not prepared in a context of recurring political instability, particularly in the last 2 years. Haiti has reported 76 confirmed coronavirus cases, among them 6 fatalities and 8 recovered patients. Meanwhile, in the Lesser Antilles, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has thanked China for supplying test kits to the Caribbean nation to combat the COVID-19 virus, where so far 116 cases have been confirmed and 8 deaths. This is all the information we have for now. Back to you in the studio.
More stories coming up after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The United States has by far the world's largest number of confirmed coronavirus cases at more than 1 million, while the death toll has topped 60,000. Amid rising pressures to boost testing capacity, health officials have stressed the challenge of getting tests to those who need them most. According to infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci, part of the White House coronavirus task force, a second round of the coronavirus is inevitable. Fauci said the federal government needs to provide strategic guidance and assistance to help states up their number of conducted tests. He claimed everyone in need of a virus test should be able to get one by the end of May or the beginning of June. In the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, the United States has continued deportations of migrants to Latin American and Caribbean countries. A report by the Center for Economic and Policy Research notes that while the US has closed its borders, it is exporting COVID-19 cases through its deportation flights. Our correspondent Jorge Hastoso has the details.
Thank you. There is a new report from CEPR, the Center for Economic and Policy Research, under the title of Exporting COVID-19, ICE Air conducted deportation flights to 11 Latin American and Caribbean countries, flights data shows. And what it shows is that they have been planning deportations after the US has declared the national emergency. And they're coming deportations from detention centers that are hotspots of coronavirus contagious. And those flights are going to different countries. The same report says that ICE Air appears to have made 21 deportation flights to Guatemala, and they're listed. Say, in Guatemala, there were 21, 18 to Honduras, 12 to El Salvador, 6 to Brazil, 3 each to Nicaragua, Ecuador, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, and 1 each to Colombia and Jamaica. So what is taking place according to the report, that is very, very comprehensive, is that while the government of President Trump is closing the borders, and in order to protect Americans to possible contagions of COVID-19, they are exporting demonstrations and people that has been deported to different Latin American countries that say that have no capacity, no resources to combat the pandemic. At the same time, there are some economic news. The GDP, or the first quarter, has fell 4.8%. The Department of Commerce says that it could be worse even in the second quarter. The first quarter was the worst since 2008 in terms of what it has to be with unemployment. We have reported that in the last 5 weeks, 26.5 million Americans has lost their jobs, were filing for unemployment. But there's a study from the Institution of Public Economy that says that there is an online survey that shows that could be about 8 to 12 another millions of Americans that has been also unemployed and has not been reflected on that figures. If that is the case, we should be at probably very close to 40 million Americans with no jobs. When 26.5 million Americans with no job, that was meaning 1 every 6 workers. So imagine if we're getting even worse the amounts of unemployment. And tomorrow there's going to be again the release of the figures of the last week. We get back to you now.
Spain's health ministry announced that more than 50% of people infected with the novel coronavirus in the country have recovered. This Wednesday marks the 6th consecutive day that the number of fatalities has been below 400 in Spain, while the number of confirmed cases is now over 236,000.
We passed the peak. We are bending the curve, and precisely the best way to visualize the point at which we are is to put in value that more than 50% of the people who have been infected in our country by coronavirus, I insist more than 50%, have already recovered in Spain. We are about to begin, and Prime Minister said it yesterday, a new phase, a complex phase, don't forget that, a very difficult one that is going to demand to all of us the best of ourselves, but we have reasons to have hope and to feel capable of getting it.
Pero tenemos razones para la esperanza, para sentirnos capaz de alcanzar. Evidentemente hasta el día
China's health authorities announced a total of 22 new COVID-19 cases in the mainland on Tuesday, of which 21 were imported. The only local case was reported in Guangdong province, according to the National Health Commission. Meanwhile, 23 patients were discharged from hospitals after recovering on Tuesday, while the number of severe cases remained unchanged at 50. The overall number of confirmed cases in China has reached over 82,000, while the death toll is 4,633. China now ranks 10th in the world in terms of the number of cases. Tokyo's governor this Wednesday called for an extension of Japan's nationwide state of emergency, which calls on people to stay home and practice social distancing to stem the spread of the coronavirus. The reported daily cases of COVID-19 in Tokyo have topped 100 in recent days. Japan has seen almost 400 deaths so far, 100 of which were in Tokyo. The state of emergency is scheduled to continue until May 6, which marks the end of the Golden Week holidays that began this week. The government has asked people not to travel during the holidays. Japan does not have a mandatory lockdown in place, but rather recommendations, meaning that some businesses and restaurants remain open. As Europe and the US struggle with COVID-19 outbreaks, Vietnam has all but beaten the coronavirus. Vietnam has now gone 5 days straight without reporting any new confirmed cases of COVID-19 and nearly 2 weeks without any of local transmission. Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc said on Tuesday that the country had the pandemic under control. Vietnam has reported a total of just 270 COVID-19 cases, of whom 222 have recovered, while no fatalities have been recorded. According to local media, Vietnam has conducted more than 200,000 coronavirus tests. And we're taking one last break now, but stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. The polio vaccination campaign in Africa has been put on hold due to the coronavirus pandemic, sparking warnings of fresh outbreaks. Vaccinations for up to 12 million children in Africa will be delayed due to a major redeployment of polio eradication resources to fight the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to Dr. Pascal Makanda, the World Health Organization's coordinator of polio eradication in Africa, polio prevention campaigns will be suspended until at least the second half of 2020. While noting that the decision will inevitably lead to a rise in polio cases, the WHO official said they took the difficult decision to suspend plans in order to tackle COVID-19. Djibouti has seen a rapid spike in coronavirus cases to record the highest prevalence in the African continent. The tiny but strategically important country that hosts major US and French military bases recorded over 900 positive cases on Tuesday, the highest in East Africa. With a population of about 1 million, Djibouti has conducted more than 10,000 COVID-19 tests. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention noted that with 98.6 cases per 100,000 people, the country has the highest prevalence on the continent. The rate of multiplication is alarming, as in just 2 weeks, Djibouti has reported a 7-fold increase in cases. The country has reported over 1,000 cases and 2 fatalities. The number of COVID-19 cases in Tanzania jumped to 480 on Wednesday after more than 100 people tested positive. Tanzanian Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa said the country had also registered 6 more deaths, bringing the total number of fatalities to 16 since the first case was recorded in the country over a month ago. The Prime Minister said that 174 of the new patients were from the mainland and 22 from the semi-autonomous region of Zanzibar. He also announced that the number of recovered patients had risen from 48 to 167. The Prime Minister called on the public to stop spreading false information on COVID-19 deaths. 10 more people in Kenya have tested positive for the novel coronavirus, taking the total number of confirmed cases to 384, while 14 people have died.
From the data that we are synthesizing, we are noting that in the beginning of this scourge, we had most of the cases being imported cases, but right now the tables have turned and most of our cases are coming from local transmission within our communities. And so our containment measures are quite crucial at this point.
Volunteers in South Africa's Cape Town are going door to door, making sure that those in need are not going hungry while the country battles the coronavirus outbreak. More in the following report.
Since the national lockdown started in late March, thousands of volunteers have been lifting their hands for duty, giving up their own time as part of a collective fight to feed as many vulnerable people on the Cape Flats. For author and activist Griselda Godbroom, it's a strong sense of civic duty that brought her to Khayelitsha, an informal township and one of the Cape Town's virus epicenters.
Very important for us to come out and serve our communities, and where it's time for us to also show what is the serving of communities, because usually our communities see people from on TV, they see people's work on TV, and for us to come close and finally come door to door and give out these food parcels, it's very important. It gets relevant.
It's a story many volunteers are relating to, as everyone contributes to efforts while facing the COVID-19 crisis. Even the elderly and the young are making sure their community gets fed. Some volunteers do this while their own future remains uncertain.
Being in the hospitality industry, we work crazy hours. We always at work, like day in and day out. So now, because of the lockdown, I've got nothing to do with my time. So I thought, why not giving something back to the community? You know, come and volunteer, help out. There's a lot of people that are suffering a lot. I'm also suffering. The whole world is suffering. But there are people that actually didn't even have jobs. That won't get UIF. They won't get leave money.
Volunteers of just about every sector of society are giving up their time and working alongside the government, NGOs and communities to make sure that nobody gets left behind in these difficult times. Even though lockdown regulations will be slowly eased, their work will remain just as important. After recording 75 COVID fatalities, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa on Thursday said the country would gradually start easing lockdown restrictions from May 1st.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani on Wednesday told the United States it should stop plotting against his nation amid fresh tensions in the Persian Gulf. The last Iran-US confrontation in the Gulf came on April 15th, when the United States alleged that Iranian boats had harassed its Navy ships in what it described as international waters. President Donald Trump then tweeted that he had ordered the US Navy to destroy all Iranian gunboats in case of harassment of US ships at sea. Rouhani stressed in his last address that the Iranian armed forces and the police have always and will always be the guardians of the Persian Gulf. Tensions between the US and Iran have escalated since 2018, when Trump decided to unilaterally withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal and reimpose crippling sanctions.
The
Americans should know that this Gulf is called the Persian Gulf, not the New York Gulf or the Washington Gulf. They must understand the situation by that name and by the coastal nation that has protected his waterway for thousands of years.
Dozens of people, including children, were killed in an enormous blast in the Syrian city of Afrin after a truck-borne bomb detonated in the middle of a crowded street. The bomb exploded in a marketplace near the city centre on Tuesday afternoon, sending a vast fireball and column of black smoke from the truck. 47 people were wounded in addition to the fatalities, according to the Turkish Defence Ministry. Afrin was seized by Turkish forces more than 2 years ago. While no group has yet taken responsibility for the attack, Ankara has pinned blame on the YPG, a Kurdish militia active in Syria. April 29th is International Dance Day, offering an opportunity to pay tribute to those who have chosen this form of expression to overcome all kinds of cultural and political barriers. And we finished this news brief with a video to celebrate dance and diversity. Remember, you can get all the latest news on our website, as well as by following us on social media. For Television English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching, and why not have a dance?